Alright guys, I managed to get inside the new BMW i5. This is a prototype, and I'm gonna steal the car for a little bit to go for a drive. Let's do it. Let's put some proper glasses on too, BMW glasses, just so, because we're cool today.
Yeah.
Right. All right, so we're gonna go for a drive right now, as I said, with the BMW i5 eDrive 40. This is a rear-wheel drive prototype of the new BMW i5. So this is all about the driving dynamics of the new BMW i5. I'm gonna try two cars, an eDrive 40, which is a rear-wheel drive hi-5, and then I'm gonna try the i5 M60 all-wheel drive. Let's go. I'm actually in Miramas, southern France, near Marseille, where BMW has the very, very famous secret testing facility, secret test track, where they're all year round testing a bunch of different cars. And it just happens that today I am driving the new BMW i5. We will see this car next month, but the idea today is really to focus not on the design of the car and all of that, but really on the driving dynamics and all the features that are available in the new i5. So you're gonna see me driving this car on normal roads like regular people. You're gonna see me going with the i5 M60 on a track. So we're gonna really, really push the car to see its driving dynamics. That's always cool to see in a BMW, of course. And then later today, I'm also gonna have a chance to try some of the latest updates to the driving assistance features, especially the highway assistant and all of that. So the level 2+ features that you might have seen in the new BMW i7, for example. So we'll have a lot of content coming up today, and of course, a lot of cool driving. So don't go anywhere. So before we go on some of these back roads here, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about the specs on the BMW i5 eDrive 40, and then later today on the i5 M60. So rear wheel drive, it makes 250 kilowatts of power. That translates into about 340 PS, so about 330, 340 HP basically. Of course, it's an electric car, so we have to talk about the range. The estimated EPA range for the US is 295 miles for this particular eDrive 40, and then the WLTP, it's up to 582 kilometers. This particular test car, it comes with adaptive dampers, a rear air suspension, which is standard on the BMW i5 models. I'm also testing the rear axle steering, and nonetheless, we are running on some really massive wheels, 20-inch in particular for this car. The other thing that I want to test in this car is the variable steering, so that's another feature that's available on this particular tester. So that's kind of the nutshell, what the car is all about here. All right, so before we get onto some of these back roads, I'm actually on a little stretch of a small highway here. So I'm gonna have a chance to really try different settings. So right now I'm actually in personal. I'm gonna go into sport first. Just kind of have a feeling of the car. Just like all the other BMWs, immediately you can feel the car being a little bit sharper. So the suspension a little bit stiffer. Of course, there is a lot more weight in the steering as you'd expect. And I'm assuming the entire car gets a little bit more on the sporty side as you'd expect with this mode. Clearly, I'm also getting a lot more power response. And speaking of that, you might have seen this acceleration, which I can't wait to really test it. So that's sport. Let me go into the comfort for a second, because I was told that there is a quite significant gap in between comfort and sport. So really no surprise there. It's the typical BMW philosophy. We've seen it, of course, in the new i7 and the 7 Series and all of that. I'm expecting these modes to be a little bit different in the i5 because of the size of the car. So it will handle a little bit different, especially when you're going in Sport Plus and you're going fast on the track or on the roads. Speaking of that, I'm following another BMW car. A little bit of curvy roads here. So as I said, right now I'm in the comfort mode. I can feel the car being definitely soft. The suspension kind of goes nicely over the bumps on the road. So very comfortable. And of course, the rear air suspension helps quite a bit of that to absorb some of the shocks and the impurities in the road. The steering, as I said, a lot softer. You can see there is not much movement when you do this, because you wouldn't expect it to do that. That's the idea of this comfort mode. You want to be able to drive relaxed, maybe through city center or even long distances, and you don't want to constantly having to fight that steering input. So now let's try the sport mode, right? Because we want to see how the car behaves then as well. So sport, you can see immediately that the car has changed its character. So the suspension, it's a lot stiffer. There is a lot more weight in the steering wheel. And then, of course, the entire chassis is a lot more composed and rigid. So once again, no surprise to me. I'm so used to driving BMW cars with this type of driving modes, and it's your typical behavior. I do expect, as I said a little bit earlier, that when I push the car a little bit harder and on the track for the Sport Plus, the Sport mode, to be a lot more fun than it will be in the 7 Series, mostly because of the car size and the weight and all of that. Speaking of the weight, BMW, it's not ready to tell me what the actual weight is, but of course it's somewhere in between an i4 and an i7, right? So we'll find out when the car comes out. What's the final figure? Of course, this one, it's using also the 5th generation architecture from BMW, and essentially the same battery packs and same motors that you see in the i4 and the i7. Since I am driving the eDrive 40, so i5 eDrive 40, rear wheel drive, the car is definitely lighter than the i5 M60, so that will be the top of the line model. And because it has the all-wheel drive and a lot more standard features in the car, it will definitely be heavier. I'm not sure by how much, but at the same time, it will also grip a lot better because of the all-wheel drive, and I do expect that car to have impressive figures when it comes to 0 to 60 or 0 to 62 miles per hour. And hopefully I get a chance to test that later today on the track. I'm not sure they're gonna let me actually get some official numbers on that, but nonetheless, I can at least tell you in comparison to the i4 and the i7 how it feels like. I am right now in the B driving mode, so you have the brake regeneration modes that you're seeing in the i4 and in the i7, so I will be testing them quite a bit. Right now I'm in the more aggressive mode, but I will go into the adaptive, and that's gonna let the car kind of handle the entire brake regeneration process, and we can talk about that as well. Steering input, honestly, I don't want to focus too much on that, but I do like the heaviness of the steering in the Sport mode. It is a lot more responsive. You can see the car starts to move a little bit more than you might have seen it in the Comfort mode. So once again, no surprise there, your typical BMW behavior. Of course, it's a variable steering ratio, so it adjusts the input and the feedback based on the speed that you're going. So I'm assuming as soon as I'll start pushing the car a lot more, and especially like on the track, I will be able to get even more feedback and response from the steering. It doesn't seem to be very dead center on, so I guess that's always a good thing. Once again, I'm talking about steering input and all of that and feedback, but a lot of the 5 Series customers, even the 7 Series customers, they don't even care about that. It's not always about that. It's sometimes more about the luxurious aspect of the car more than what it feels like if you're cornering or going fast. A lot of the times we're not even pushing the car to its full potential. So right now it's showing the battery being about 94%, and temperature outside it's about 17 Celsius, which I think probably in the 70s or close to the 70 Fahrenheit, around there, if my math is correct. I'm showing the range left about 397 kilometers. That's probably the WLTP there. And essentially, since I started with 100% and I've been driving for about maybe 10 kilometers right now, that seems to be fairly accurate within that range for the car. Also, the one thing that I forgot to mention in the car, and I'm actually happy that they didn't manage to cover this one, might have been impossible to cover the steering wheel, but it is getting the same flat bottom steering wheel that you see in the 7 Series. Seems to be a little bit different shape. It's also got a really nice touch right here at 12 o'clock. So quite cool. I can't actually wait for BMW to use this particular steering wheel in M cars as well, because I truly like it. It's got the same boost mode pedal on the left side, which will give you some additional bursts of power when needed. It's great for overtaking, of course. And I don't recall exactly the algorithm behind it, but essentially you can really sustain that power for a long time. And I guess I'll have a chance to test that when the car really comes out and take the car for a longer drive. Turning in, as you see right here, very precise, very sharp actually, and quite comfortable. Of course, I'm in the Sport mode. I was not going at high speeds, but I can see, this being a very good daily driver considering all the 7 Series features there inside the car, like the rear axle steering and the air suspension. It has the same brake-by-wire system, once again, as all the other new BMWs. Apparently, there is a different modulation of the pedals, so it travels a little bit different than in the i7, I was told. I can't really tell so far. I guess I'll have to take them back to back. So you can see now I'm pushing the car. All right, keep in mind this is only a 340 horsepower vehicle. The i5 M60 will have somewhere between 590 and 600 HP, so it will be a lot faster. But nonetheless, even this one, as you can see, I'm not even actually flooring the pedal, and it's quite fast. I'm actually with my friend here, Tobias. He's helping me film this, and I have a feeling that he's gonna get car sick in a second, especially the way that we test cars. We like to push hard and brake and do all of that, and it's quite annoying. If you've never been in a car with a journalist, then actually don't do it. I don't encourage you to do that because it is not fun at all. So once again, you kind of push the car and then you kind of brake hard to see what it does. Very composed. The roads are not nearly perfect, so there are a lot of elevations in the road basically, and I can see the car moving a little bit left and right, so it's got a little bit of a body roll, but certainly not as much as in the i7, and definitely a little bit more than in the i4, which I feel like it also sits a little bit lower to the ground based on my driving position right now. I'm riding on 20-inch with Pirelli P0, so high performance tires. They're quite grippy. Of course, they might not be as grippy as you see on the Michelin PS4S. I'm not even sure that's going to be an option for this car. They might be, but nonetheless, they are good for this type of weather conditions. The temperature outside is actually quite perfect to test cars today. And I'm assuming also from a battery efficiency perspective, this is a really nice temperature to have. So I'm going to change right now the brake regeneration. So I'm in the drivetrain and chassis feature. And let's go right now into a high mode. So essentially the braking is a lot more aggressive right now. So once again, as I said, you have the adaptive, you have an option between high, moderate, and low. I've said it before with the i4 and the iX1 and the i7. As much as I like to play around with all the settings, I still find myself leaving the car mostly in the adaptive mode because it just does the work for you. It is quite good at actually protecting what it needs to do, so you don't have to worry too much. And then speaking of all the settings in iDrive, this is actually the iDrive 8.5. If you have not seen that video, I'm going to make sure to link it right here. I'm going to leave it in the description as well, because we were the first ones to actually get a full demo of 8.5. And I guess one of the standout features of that particular system is this one called Quick Select. You can see it in that demo video. I can show you right here, but essentially it's a new integration of the tiles, kind of like on the left side, more of a quick select type of thing for certain features. And then of course the overall system, it's a lot more responsive than in iDrive 8. Also the voice commands, I've used them a little bit in the new i7 M70, and the system was quite responsive. But of course, we'll talk about that more when the car is being unveiled. Inside, can't really see much, honestly. It's all being covered up, but essentially, I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to tell you because I stole the car. But I can maybe tell you that the center console is similar to the 7 Series there on the i4, so kind of similar controls. Of course, a little bit more luxurious in the i7. Then you have a really nice carbon fiber trim here. And then naturally, because you have the iDrive 8.5, you are losing the physical buttons, and you have a very nice integration of the controls right here, minimalistic as you'd expect, since there are not that many switches and buttons left. On the left side, if I pull this a little bit, you can see some really high quality switches integrated into the dashboard, but it does look to be a little bit different than the i7, so maybe not as luxurious, more on the business side. And I do like the trim on this one as well. It's actually cold to touch, so that tells me that it's not fake plastic and all of that. So that's really nice. Seems to be a combination of carbon fiber and probably aluminum. If I look on the side, I can't really lift it up because that's going to get me in trouble about, once again, some of the controls. They're on the door panel, and it just looks like overall a very luxurious cabin, at the same time very BMW-like, driver-oriented, of course. And then at the same time, it doesn't look like a spaceship that you might see, let's say, in a Mercedes or an Audi. And I do enjoy this minimalistic and simplistic look of the interior design. It's really more focused on the driver experience versus any other whistles and bells. So now we're on some stretches of road where we can go a little bit more dynamic. So once again, I'm in sport mode, everything is dialed up. The road is not very smooth, so this is really gonna stress the suspension, and especially when you're cornering, I can feel that rear extra suspension working extra for me right now. It is quite bouncy, of course. I'm riding on 20-inch wheels. They're quite wide, but The car, from what I was told, it's a little bit wider than the outgoing 5 Series, and because also of the bigger tires and wheels, it does feel a lot more balanced on the road, a lot more composed, and I can feel that. I mean, I'm pushing the car quite hard. I don't want to tell you what the speed is. Cornering, very, very good. As I said, I think Toby's going to hate me after this one, because you're getting car sick quite quickly in an electric car, especially with the constant braking and all of that. The feedback from the steering, it's clearly a lot more impressive when you're cornering, because now the steering ratio is being adjusted based on the road. And this is a very bouncy road. I think I've been on a bouncier road than this one in a very long time. So you can really try the car, or at least try its full potential if possible. The suspension does a very good job actually absorbing the shocks in the road, so even though it bounces quite a bit, it's not as bad as I thought. Of course, it's the typical BMW electric car behavior, very smooth to accelerate. It's not doing that neck snapping feeling that you might see from other automakers, so I do actually enjoy the more linear power delivery on their electric cars. It's not always about squeezing the last second or millisecond of performance in a straight line, but it's also really about the driving dynamics and the overall balanced package. Companies like Tesla, for example, they're all about that straight line performance, but once you try to corner them and have some fun with them, you can see their shortcomings when it comes to the driving dynamics or the engineering knowledge when it comes to that. This one feels like a BMW, honestly. I would say more than the i7 in a way, because it's lighter, it's a lot closer to what BMW stands for as far as the driving dynamics and the ultimate driving machine kind of thing. So if it was me today, as much as I love the i7 and all the luxury features and all the cool factor that comes with it, especially inside, I would still probably pick the i5 because it's a lot closer to my driving philosophy and the way that I want to drive my own cars, or maybe the experience that I want to get from my own cars. So since I was mentioning the rear axle air suspension and the dampers a little bit earlier today, I just found out that essentially they are the same as the i4, for example, but of course they are tuned and adjusted to the i5 size and weight. Again, typical BMW philosophy, no surprise there. Of course, the software tuning does all the little tricks for you when it comes to the handling on the road, but I just kind of wanted to clarify that to make sure there are really no significant changes. So my drive with the xDrive 40, it's coming to an end. It was about an hour loop almost. So I got a little bit of experience driving the car through some city centers and of course through some of the back roads. Naturally, there will be a more intensive, a more extensive testing process later this year when the car is being launched. And then of course we'll talk a lot more about its capabilities and all of that. But at a first glance, honestly, even the xDrive 40 feels quite fast. You're not struggling for power at any point. It does feel comfortable to drive it in city centers. I mean, there wasn't much traffic, but there were a few tight roads and all of that, and it's easy to maneuver. So that's always a nice plus, especially for an electric car. So once again, first generation 5 Series all electric. This is a major product for BMW. The 5 Series is and always was one of their cornerstone products, and it kind of feels the same way with the i5. You have a lot of technology from the i7, but then you also have a lot of the driving dynamics from the i4. So that's why that positioning between a 3 and a 7 quite fits the character of the i5. So with that being said, I'm gonna return the car right now, and then we'll see if I get in trouble, and hopefully I can now steal the i5 M60, and we're gonna go for a ride with that, so don't go anywhere. Right guys, so we just switched cars. We're with the BMW i5 M60, and we're gonna go now for a handling course. And Daniel, you're gonna tell me some more about the car?
Yeah, of course.
All right, let's do it. So, what do we have here?
Yeah, M60, okay. Top motor, top suspension here, perfect mixture out of our systems, so adaptive dampers on the front and the rear, okay. Rear axle air spring only on the electric cars, okay. Because of the weight and the functional neutrality. We have active roll bars. We have a steering system on the front with a variable gear ratio. And on the rear we have a rear axle steering. 2.5 degrees. 2.5.
2.5, okay.
Yeah, because for us it's the perfect compromise in the measure chain, in the lateral measure chain, out of wide tires, wide trunk width, and of course the handling advantages the rear axle steering has, and you can't do the steering angle increase more because then the turning point goes in the front and the car feels like a forklift. The rear overtakes the front, and this will feel kind of strange. Yeah.
So basically the rear axle steering is the typical BMW one where you can adjust based on the speed, right? So
yeah, of course.
You know, you're in city centers and that it's a different ratio, and then basically once you go higher speeds it will adjust to help you with the driving dynamics of the car, basically.
Of course.
Right, so we have about 590 something horsepower, 440 kilowatts. It's gonna be estimated. All-wheel drive, basically.
All-wheel drive, split axle, all-wheel drive, so motor in the front and motor in the rear.
We're on 20-inch Pirelli P0, so quite grippy.
Yeah, with a mixed tire, 245 on the front, 275 on the rear.
So 275 in the back, okay, so that's quite wide.
Yeah, that's wide, and we have this also the same width as in entry position on 19-inch, and we have the 255 and 285, 21-inch tire as an option. So,
okay, so you have 255, 285 as an option, basically.
Yes, on 21 only.
21, okay.
Yeah, I think you already see that with the car is the body roll is really tiny.
It is tiny, yeah, it's pretty tight actually. Yeah.
The target is that in every situation the car, in every mode, is the car is very responsive, but never nervous. This responsiveness comes out of the stiffness of the chassis. So the core of our driving dynamic concept is the battery pack in the middle, because it's the stiffest part in the chassis, and we mount the front axle and the rear axle very stiff onto this pack. On the front with the front axle carrier with a shear blade underneath, on the rear with a rear axle strut system to transfer the load very precisely from the front through the battery pack into the rear.
So fast. Unbelievable. I mean, I haven't pushed it really hard now, but I'll try to get used to it, but it's so good.
Cool, yeah, that's the rear axle steering. Yeah,
it's so good. I mean, it's composed. Yeah, that's kind of what I mentioned in the iDrive 40 drive review on the street, that I do like the power delivery being linear versus next snapping, basically. You know, it's not about the direct straight line performance, but I do like the fact that it's very linear, very progressive.
The car is always responsive, and that comes out of the steering application, so we only applicate as much damping as we need to get the steering system stable. But normally in these situations you work against the damping of the steering. So, and this makes the car feeling delayed. So we want a very responsive car in every situation, so the damping is slow, and the whole thing goes over the steering moments.
Turning here, I mean, it's really almost no body roll. I mean, of course, you have a little bit more than on the i4 because of the size, but still very good.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we allow a little body roll to feel natural, so the system can do a total flat and horizontal body, but this feels unnatural, artificial.
Gotcha.
So
it's by design that you will allow just a little bit.
Yeah, to feel familiar with the car. You feel how widespread the car behavior is. So it's in every situation it's controlled, in every situation it's handy and really responsive.
I wanted to see how controllable it is, if it's understeers, oversteers. I mean, I don't feel any understeering, you know, many situations.
Yeah, of course the target is to have it really neutral, and we have two systems, three, I think. The adaptive dampers, of course, the active roll bars, which we can adjust the load transfer, put it on the understeer situation, we put it on the rear. The on an oversteer and we put it on the front. Of course, we had ARBX, so the all-wheel drive, the torque distribution. We can shift this between the axles, so we manage, and the dampers, of course. And the three components manage to have in each situation a neutral, and due to that a natural feeling.
All right, guys, so now we switched over into the personal mode, so the more comfortable drive, and we're gonna try to go over some imperfect roads, right, Daniel?
Yes.
So the idea here is really to test the suspension mostly, or?
Yeah, suspension, wheel comfort, the comfort part.
Gotcha.
And the air spring on the rear axle, so the air spring is progressive, so it's travel when you have a compression, the spring rate goes up. That's you can like in a ball, you press on a ball, and the ball gets always stiffer, and this is how also an air spring works,
Okay.
And the air spring also gives functional neutrality over load. So when you load the car, normally you have a suspension travel, and due to that you have not the full suspension travel to decelerate the body.
Okay.
But the air spring will lift up, have the same ride height again, have a stiffer spring rate due to that, and this gives the same natural frequency of the axle. So normally with the mass, natural frequency decrease, but with the same waveform, and you have this linear behavior of the body as you feel it, and due to that a lower level of accelerations. So one swing, and then it's
That's it. So there is no double bouncing.
No double
like
bouncing.
It's not like a ball where it keeps bouncing till it stops. Basically, just once and lands, it adjusts the springs right away, and you plant it basically.
Yeah.
Because I guess that's one of the things when you go at high speeds, a lot of the crashes happens because of the bouncing. Constantly, and you're losing control of the steering, right?
Yeah.
So I guess that's the advantage of this one. Basically, it's tough to show guys on camera, but something you have to experience on your own.
So you feel that the precision also is on a really rough road. The car follows naturally.
Well, guys, so you've seen a little bit of the performance of the BMW i5 M60. Daniel gave us quite a few details about the car. So unfortunately, we weren't able to talk too much through the video because we had to focus on the driving experience, but I will tell you more as I drive the car. What a fun day, guys. Honestly, I've had a lot of fun with the new BMW i5. As you've seen, I had a chance to drive both the eDrive 40 rear-wheel drive and also the i5 M60 all-wheel drive. First impression, I'm going to keep it short. It is a very, very good car. It still has that BMW DNA, which is not easy to achieve, especially in an electric car, because a lot of those cars are all about straight line performance. But I did have a chance to actually push this car onto the track, and you've seen in the video, hopefully, that it's very, very competent. It can do a lot of the things that you don't expect from an electric car. So with that being said, of course, you might be asking the question, i4 versus i5 versus i7. This is still your typical 5 Series car. So it's meant to be for those business people that want maybe a little bit more space than the 3 Series, maybe more than an i4, for example, but at the same time, they don't want to go up to an i7, which is maybe way too big and maybe in some cases, maybe way too luxurious for some people. So this is a very good compromise. Of course, I can't see the interior design, but I can tell you it is very minimalistic, and it kind of mimics what you see in the 7 Series in many, many ways. So in a nutshell, a very good car. This was my first driving impression. You've heard me talking about the car quite a bit with the experts. We were on the track, on the back roads. Then, of course, we went for the highway driving where you've seen all the features. So next step for us is really to see the car next month. So I can tell you that we will see this car at the end of May. I'm going to share more on that in our future videos and articles, but we will see it very, very soon. And then I will have a chance to drive the car once again later this fall, where we're going to be able to push the car quite a bit. So I promise you they'll have a lot more footage coming up with the car. So once again, BMW i5, Of course, they let me in here, so I did not sneak in, but I thought it would be just fun to do that. Nonetheless, to get inside this facility, it is not an easy thing. You get stopped by a bunch of security guys, you gotta show your passport and all the other details, and every time you move around, there is somebody watching you. So, of course, that's why I can't even use my cell phone, because it's all taped up. Like, by the way, this is what they do usually when you go to some of those secret facilities. They just put a bunch of stuff on it, you know, so, yeah. Anyway, once again, BMW i5, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.